Tonight our special guest is Russell Gray. Russell, as well as being owner of Auckland's upmarket restaurant Botswana Butchery, is tonight on the program as a Hospitality Auckland spokesman. The big concern at the moment is the new trading hours for bars and restaurants. And the name of their new campaign is Save Our Nightlife. We welcome Russell Gray as our special guest on The Beat Goes On. So Russell Gray, welcome to The Beat Goes On. Thank you for coming in tonight.
Great to be here.
And for all our Auckland residents and viewers, and of course right across New Zealand, not only affects Auckland, it's Save Our Nightlife.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why do we need to save our nightlife? What's happening out there?
Well, Jared, I'm representing Hospitality New Zealand Auckland, and I've been chairing a working party that has been in the process of putting submissions into council relative to the new local alcohol policy that council is considering bringing in, which has some really concerning and quite draconian measures, which worry us relative to Auckland.
You could destroy our nightlife. That's what you're really saying. Save our nightlife. So
yeah, I mean, look, we're all for safer communities. We're all for a reduction in alcohol-related harm, but we're also for some good balance here. And we're keen to protect a vibrant city, and hospitality is very much a big part of a vibrant city.
Now you're concerned because, Russell, you own a wonderful restaurant in Auckland called Botswana Butchery.
We do indeed.
And of course you're mixing and mingling with bar owners right throughout the, being part of Hospitality New Zealand Auckland. What are they, not so important for you, but for other bar owners, it's a draconian law that they're thinking of bringing in. What are they saying amongst themselves?
Well, they're genuinely very concerned that council has approached the draft local alcohol policy in the wrong way and in the wrong manner. We've already seen the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act come in as of December last year. It's done away with 24-hour trading and brought us back to 4 a.m. in the CBD, and we're all living with that quite comfortably. And the preferred position that all the bar owners would like to take is really the status quo.
Yes.
Which seems to be...
It's working fine, let's leave it.
Yeah. So the concern we've got is that the draft local alcohol policy being proposed brings back hours even further. So we'll close the CBD down at 3 a.m. and we'll close the metro centres down at 1 a.m. and it's just ridiculous.
Now there's one part of our Auckland City says by having a vibrant nightlife, it signals to the world that Auckland's a progressive modern city.
Absolutely.
And if we close down the bars at earlier and earlier, it becomes New Zealand in the 1950s. We don't want that, do we?
No,
or
we
do
don't.
we want that?
No, we don't want that. I mean, look, hospitality contributes $745 million in economic output to Auckland region. It employs 27,000 people. It is a vibrant industry. The message that we want to send to domestic and international tourists alike is that the show does never stop, and that this actually is, one of the world's most livable cities. That's the Mayor's vision for the city. And so we just think that by bringing ours back, we're sending the wrong signal. We're actually saying that Auckland isn't a safe place, and that's actually not accurate.
Who are the forces that are wanting this change? What are the forces?
Well, clearly it would be naive of anybody to think that there's not issues in the community. But what we would say is that alcohol-related harm and crime statistics show that the issues actually are out in the suburbs, in people's homes, in public places like parks, not on licensed premises. And what we also have to understand is that the elephant in the room actually is this binge drinking preloading culture that we've got in New Zealand, and the alcohol policy that the council is proposing does nothing to address that bigger issue. We would say that the safest place to be at 3:30 a.m. in the morning in the CBD in Auckland is actually in a well-run, well-supervised, licensed premise.
Now this binge drinking mentality that New Zealand's got is once again the result of short-sighted policies way back. Remember when we were growing up, Russell, 6 o'clock closing. They had this idea that if you limit it and restrict it, it'll go away.
Yep.
It never does it?
It
In
never
fact,
does.
we're living with the results of the 6 o'clock mentality today.
Yeah, possibly we are. We're also living with the results of a real shift in the consumption of alcohol away from licensed premises, which are supervised and well run, to purchasing alcohol off premise, cheap booze through supermarkets, consuming it at home or in cars or in parks, preloading, sideloading, then coming to town and causing issues.
So the bar owners of today could be the scapegoats of the fact that you can go along to a supermarket, buy everything you want around about 8 o'clock at night, get yourself thoroughly tanked, go into town, and then be picked up by the police, and then the police say it's these bar owners opening up late at night.
Absolutely. I mean, the
It
chances...
must be galling for the bar owners to have to...
Yeah, I mean, the chances are that someone who's heavily intoxicated is not going to get into a licensed premise anyway. They're going to loiter in the streets and they're going to cause issues. What we would say is that any local alcohol policy has to deal with those issues, but also bring in some level of accountability and personal responsibility for the individual causing those issues. And unfortunately, this draft policy doesn't address that.
Some people may say the bar owners are greedy and want to make as much profit as they can and have no thoughts about the general public. They just want to stay open all night and make money hand over fists.
That's absolutely not right. Yeah. But we should acknowledge that they are a significant contributor to the economic GDP of this region and a significant employer. If the draft proposal goes through as planned by council, there'll be 1,000 people lose their jobs.
That's a lot, isn't it?
That is a lot, and no one wants that.
Yeah.
What the bar owners are saying, and I think is pretty sensible, is accepting that 24-hour licensing has gone, and accepting that 4 a.m. in the CBD and 3 a.m. in the metro centres is actually workable, and it does provide a balanced approach to it, and I think that's to be commended.
Well, what's the worst that can happen?
I guess our concern is that if they close at 3, if anyone actually genuinely believes that people are going to stop drinking, then they've got to think twice. What will happen is people will be texting each other and going, so where's the party now? Yeah. They'll head back to the suburbs and they'll party next to you and I when we're trying to sleep, and that's not what we want.
Well, I live in the city, and I tell you, there's some loud parties, isn't there? Yeah. So.
And I think what's worse is that if they close metro centres like Takapuna, for example, down at 1 a.m, well, those people are going to get in their cars and drive into town for the next couple of hours, and we don't want that migratory pattern happening either. That's not responsible.
Now, there has been a change. It wasn't long ago, it was 24 hours. Now it's 4 o'clock, and everybody seems to be happy with that. But what has happened since then?
Well, what's interesting is that bar owners are coping with it. Police were sort of lauding a tremendous reduction in crime rates. Police's own statistics as late as May show that alcohol-related harm has gone up.
Wow.
And consumption of alcohol has increased. So again, it shows you that there is no correlation between the hours of trade and issues in the community.
Hence, save our nightlife.
Save our nightlife.
Yeah.
And we don't want to be closing down when other cities in New Zealand are staying open. Wellington's been through this process and has already agreed that they'll be allowed 4 a.m. with an hour extension to 5 a.m. for good operators. So what message is Auckland trying to send? I mean, Sydney and King's Cross has just had some pretty draconian sort of changes over there. Closed down King's Cross at 3 a.m, introduced a one-way door policy from 1:30, and they've had a huge increase in serious assaults in the streets. Lots of businesses have gone out of business, and lots of people have lost their jobs. So they're having to rethink. In the UK, which is an experience that we should follow and look at very, very closely, the UK decided to bring in 3 a.m. closing. They ended up with all sorts of issues in the suburbs that just drove people drinking into the suburbs and partying in their homes. They've decided in 2005 to change that, and they went back to 24-hour licensing, and they remain at that. And look, I just implore those that are making the decisions on behalf of the city, to look at all the research, to make their decisions based on robust, fact-based analysis and evidence. And Hospitality New Zealand Auckland, in our submission, is producing some very compelling independent research and evidence. And it says that the status quo should remain and the preferred position is 4 a.m. for the CBD.
Now, Russell, you're doing your job, of course. You're out there saving our nightlife. So if you do want to save our nightlife, what do you recommend to the average viewer if they're concerned about this? What can they do?
Well, I'm hopeful that there are a lot of viewers that have already put their submission into council as part of the process. But if they haven't, they should be talking to their local councillor and saying, you know, the nighttime economy is pretty important for Auckland. We want to save jobs, we don't want businesses going out of business, and we want to be the show that never stops.
Russell, yourself, we mentioned right at the beginning, we talked about the fact that you're one of the owners of Botswana Butchery, the name of a restaurant. When I first heard it, and I've been to the restaurant, wonderful restaurant, it did strike me, that name. What a great name. I mean, it stands out. So how did Botswana start?
Botswana Butchery, it's a premium fun dining restaurant. It's located in the iconic Ferry building in Auckland, but we've been operating for the last 6.5 years out of Archer's Cottage in Queenstown, and arguably one of the busiest restaurants in New Zealand. Big emphasis on local produce, big emphasis on cuts of wonderful New Zealand meat and lamb, of course, shoulders of lamb to die for.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah, so, and the butchery, classic reference to meat, obviously, and Botswana just seemed to rhyme quite nicely with that. So, and Botswana Butchery now has turned itself into quite an iconic brand in New Zealand.
It used to be Chin Chin's, wasn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Down there by the Ferry building.
I mean,
so what made you pick that site?
Well, look, we had, many thousands of people from Auckland go down to Queenstown to visit in all seasons of the year, telling us, when are you going to open up this great restaurant in Auckland? We kept looking for a site, we kept looking at the viaduct and walking past towards Britomart and going past the iconic Ferry building, and we thought we can go and reinvent Chin Chin and create Botswana Butchery. Two years on, just over 100,000 people have dined at Botswana Butchery in Auckland, so that's fantastic.
The more you're talking about Botswana, the more I think, gosh, I'd like to get down there and have another meal. It's a wonderful restaurant, but what about some of our viewers winning a lovely meal to the value of $250 at Botswana? Is that possible, Russell?
That sounds fantastic to me.
So
let's do that. Let's do that.
Okay, let's have a competition. Jared at thebeatgoeson.co.nz. And we need a qualifying question, and I think the qualifying question should be, what is the name of the campaign being run currently called Save Our Nightlife? So if you can put that in the subject line on the email, and then with all the emails, we'll draw one of the winners, and they're allowed to come to the restaurant. And what's the spending limit?
Dinner for two, the value of $250.
$250. Wow. That'd be a wonderful night, wouldn't it?
They'll have a great night.
Now, the address of the restaurant, once again, Russell, is, just to make sure that they don't get lost on the night they go out to have their wonderful meal, it's...
Everyone knows the Ferry building
in Auckland.
Key Street in Auckland.
Now, Russell, thanks for coming in today, but I do notice that you'd be a good baby, a classic baby boomer, Russell?
I would indeed.
Yes.
He was born in 1959.
And whereabouts in New Zealand?
Born in Christchurch.
Russell, great to see you, and look, best of luck with the campaign. Save Our Nightlife.